Jada Pinkett Smith. Woke fail. Narcissists hate failure, unless it's somebody else's, and then, of course, we very much revel in the schadenfreude of seeing somebody else fuck up, and for us to benefit from that. Somebody else's misery is an opportunity for certain narcissists to swoop in there and express false compassion and support. "Oh, you must be devastated, my dear," as the individual clucks around that person, doling out false tea and sympathy. The individual is none the wiser. The narcissist is just doing it as part of the facade management to make themselves seem like they care. In other instances, usually the lesser, they'll pile misery on misery. "Well, I did tell you that if you did this, it would all come crashing down around your ears. When are you going to listen to me?" No sympathy whatsoever. They may well be right about what they've said, but that's not much use to the person who has just lost their shirt in a dodgy investment. Upset, hurt, they're going to get no sympathy or support from that particular lesser narcissist, who is reveling in the fact that they were correct, or they believe themselves to be correct, and now they see the misery of their friend or family member. The greater narcissist, of course, may well state, "Well, it turned out as I predicted," and they may be less acerbic with regard to their criticism in the way that a lesser would, but knowingly they will sit there reveling in the misfortune of a rival, particularly where that has been brought about by the greater through the Machiavellian behaviours and planning that the greater involves themselves in. Quite simply, the failure of other people is an opportunity for the narcissist, either to drink deep of that person's misery, because it's been caused by the narcissist, or an opportunity, particularly for the mid-rangers, to flex their false compassion and dive in and start to try and help. But when it comes to the failure for a narcissist, this is a huge problem. Certain narcissists are naturally successful, inherently capable, talented, intelligent. They're very good at what they do and enjoy much success, but even where they may have a problem, a form of failure is a huge threat to control, because it suggests that the narcissist hasn't got things right. And as you know, the narcissist is always right in order to maintain that control, to maintain that sense of importance, that inflated ego. Lesser and mid-range narcissists are less likely to be met with success to the same extent that a greater does. They can still achieve it, particularly mid-rangers and upper lesser. But they are also going to have more than their fair share of failure, particularly lower lesser, middle lesser, lower mid-range, and sometimes middle mid-range also. There is the reality gap between what they believe they can achieve and what they actually do. The fact that their narcissism leads them to be deluded, believing, for instance, that they can sing, so they enter a competition where they're roundly humiliated, that they believe that they found a particular niche in the market, only to find that there's no market in the niche, and thus they lose their investment. Of course, it wasn't the right time. Market conditions moved against them. It wasn't their fault. It was the advertising agency. They didn't do their job properly, or the financial director gave bad advice. The narcissist, of course, will never be at fault. Failure is like a hammer blow to the narcissist. It can cause problems with the mid-ranger's facade, and it can cause problems for that narcissist, of course, with regard to the issue of control. Jada Pinkett Smith is a narcissist, as I've explained in numerous parts past him. And she has just experienced failure by having involvement with a woke fail, namely Netflix's Queen Cleopatra appears to have the worst audience score in television history. Oh dear, that is not an accolade that Jada Pinkett Smith will want. Netflix's docudrama Queen Cleopatra, launched 2 weeks ago, now looks to have earned the unenviable plaudit of drawing the worst audience score in TV history. Forbes magazine reports the controversial production has not just garnered the lowest audience score in Netflix history on debut, it has essentially the lowest audience score possible on Rotten Tomatoes at 1%. Not a 10%, a 1%. Although Forbes reports it later stumbled upwards to hit the giddy heights of 2%. It's still an unprecedented low. The outlet acknowledged the basement score, saying fans usually rate things higher than critics, even bad shows. And the point being, a 1% audience score seems borderline mathematically impossible, even with the controversy the film has attracted. The documentary, which is part of the African Queens series, purports to be an exploration of the rise and fall of the last pharaoh of Egypt. It was released on May the 10th. It proposes the case that Cleopatra was a black woman, with several of the commentators featured arguing Cleopatra could potentially be of African descent instead of Greek. The Daily Caller, for one, has documented dissenting voices that question the proposition Queen Cleopatra had African descent. Cleopatra VII was white, of Macedonian descent, as were all of the Ptolemy rulers who lived in Egypt. Catherine Bard, professor of archaeology and classical studies at Boston University. I guess she would perhaps know something about it. We know who her father was, Gerald Kadish, teaching professor of history at Near Eastern Studies at Binghamton University, is also quoted as saying. Jada Pinkett Smith, of course, is an executive producer of this clusterfuck, which once again showed that sense of entitlement to try and rewrite history by saying to people, actually, we're going to tell you how it is. But we're going to say to you, we're going to rewrite history. We're going to tell you that Queen Cleopatra was black when she wasn't. There's no need for this to be done. But once again, it shows, and undoubtedly had the tainted touch of Jada Pinkett Smith wanting to push her own agenda, so that history is revised. Not just a personal history this time between narcissist and victim, but an attempt to revise history as a whole. Now, interestingly, African Americans make up about 12% of the general public, and therefore this voting shows that even they aren't impressed with this nonsense. And you know what will happen from this. Jada Pinkett Smith won't look at it and think, do you know something, we misjudged this. We made a major boo-boo by trying to change the race of Cleopatra. We need to learn from this and not do it again. Nor will the relevant individuals at Netflix think, actually, do you know something? The public are getting a bit fed up with this tinkering, aren't they? You need to do something different. Instead, people like Jada Pinkett Smith, because of course it can't be her failure, she's done the right thing. She has portrayed it as it meant to be. Instead, she will suggest that the population that have voted here are racist. That simply because they didn't like the fact that a portrayal was inaccurate, therefore nothing to do with being racist, just you didn't like the inaccuracy of the portrayal, that they are then labelled as racist. That, of course, is the typical response of someone like Jada Pinkett Smith to evade that accountability, which, of course, is a threat to control. It's not a case of people saying, oh, we want a white person playing Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, in some kind of biopic of him. No, he was a black man. Therefore, it makes sense to have a black man playing him. Here, Cleopatra wasn't black. And that's what people object to. They don't object to a black person playing her because they dislike black people. They object to a black portrayal because it's not accurate. And that's what it comes down to. But a narcissist, such as Jada Pinkett Smith, won't accept that. She sees that it's right to behave this way, that she operates with her sense of entitlement. And of course, such a failure, while stinging for her, is something that she will have to nullify, and she will do so by not looking within herself and saying, we got it wrong, but instead turning around and blaming everybody else. And the easiest way to do so is once again to play that race card. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.